Krishna. I left Hawaii 1 month ago today. Went to Mayapur just to see Panchatattva Abhishek. 5 years. So we were there 5 years ago. We were there last year, of course, but we were there this year just to see that. And then I wanted to come to Vrindavan. Of course, we wanted to come to Vrindavan, hopefully our home someday. But I never imagined this, speaking here today after Badri Narayan Maharaj, and he's a very difficult to follow. He knows the secret. But I've been asked to speak, and I was with Prabhupada a very special time. At least I consider I was with Prabhupada, traveling with him for 2.5 years. And during that time, I went around the world with him 4 times. But there was one period where he went around the world in 2 months. And in that time, he visited about 12 temples. And it was just at this time of year. It was February, March. He began in Juhu Beach. It actually started in 1974 here, September. Those of you know when Prabhupada was here, he became very, very ill. He stayed here for a month recovering in August, September. Not an easy thing to do, and not easy to be healthy. And after he left here, he went to, I call his pet project, Juhu. He was just going to stay for a week or two, make sure everything was moving along. And I was still with him as a servant that time. I almost left to Hawaii because of health, but I stayed with him. Then he arrived in Juhu. After 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, myself and my godbrother were watching the 747s at the morning walk fly, leaving the Delhi airport, flying to the west, and we would look. Wish it was me on there. Prabhupada stayed so long, finally, myself and Brahmananda did go to Hawaii to straighten things out. And Prabhupada said, I'll be there. When I come back, I'll be in Hawaii, then again you join me. So he left Hawaii in January. First stop was Tokyo, Japan. So he had his secretary and Sanskrit editor with him. This was going to be a very special trip, at least from my angle of vision. On the flight from Japan to Hawaii, next to Prabhupada sat by the window. Next to him was his Sanskrit editor at that time, Nitai. Some of you may know of Nitai. Next to him was Paramahamsa Swami. So Prabhupada was looking in the seat pocket in front of him, and there's a magazine there. And it says, it was Time, Newsweek, Women's Liberation, it said. Lots of women. There was a bonfire. They were burning things they didn't need anymore. And Prabhupada looked at it. So, of course, he picked it up and he's looking, and he looks at Nitai. And as he's looking at Nitai, there's this stewardess. She's walking down the aisle. And Prabhupada pokes Nitai. He said, tell her she wants to be liberated. Shave her head. Then she can be liberated. He pokes Nitai. So she's coming, and now she's there, and Prabhupada keeps poking. Go on, he said, tell her. She wants to be liberated, shave her head. Nitai didn't say anything. Prabhupada would put you in situations like that. So then he came to Hawaii. 1972, a few years, 1972, Prabhupada installed Panchatattva in Hawaii. Nunavadweep, 7 islands there, 7 islands in Hawaii. 1972, Prabhupada installed, we know. It was Govinda Dasi, of course, her husband Gorsundar was there. And he told them, make Lord Caitanya, Lord Nityananda. They were making them out of paper mache. people know what paper mache. Basically, it's paper and glue and whatever else you put in there to strengthen it up. And he was communicating back and forth how they should look, how their arms should be, who should be if same size, little taller, the arms are different. Everything he was telling them as it was going on. And it was different, very difficult. They had no reference other than letters from Prabhupada and little diagrams he would make. Lord Caitanya, Lord Nityananda. And when they finished, then he said, okay, now you have 3 more personalities to do. So that was it. Prabhupada decided Panchatattva in Hawaii. First time the Panchatattva have appeared outside of India. So Prabhupada spent some days there, and I rejoined him at that time, giving him massage and cooking. So then from Hawaii, this is 2 months, he went from Hawaii, stayed for a few days, then he went to Los Angeles for a few days. Of course, the headquarters, this was 1975 now, February 1975. So already things are going on in India. Mayapur is there. Vrindavan temple is going to open. Then the trip really started. Prabhupada went to Mexico City. This was no longer the USA. This wasn't Europe. This was South America, Mexico, Latin America. And as what he saw were hundreds of devotees. I mean, from children way up to grandmothers. This was unusual. This was very striking. Los Angeles, we were all children. Anywhere from, like he said, 17. If you were 27, you were ancient. But now, everyone in Mexico, they're becoming devotees. One of his disciples, it was a sannyasi who had fallen down, got married, had a child, all since the last time he had seen Prabhupada. So, of course, Prabhupada asked to see him. He was shy. He didn't want to come into the room. Of course, I would join whoever was going in. And now I was also grahasta. I had been Prabhupada's servant as a brahmachari. Now I was married and had a child. So I'm in white. So Prabhupada called him in. He was very embarrassed. Prabhupada, he said, can I still do service? Prabhupada looked at him. He said, yes, he said. He said, now, he pointed to me. He said, now you're grahasta like Srutakirti. He said, so you just continue with your service in that way. I was a brahmachari, I was Prabhupada's servant. I was a grahasta, I was Prabhupada's servant. So he's saying, nothing's changing, just do your service. And then he said, it's okay, Prabhupada. Yes, Prabhupada said. He said, I'm not Lord Caitanya. He said, Lord Caitanya, he could make the animals chant and dance. He said, but I can't. He said, I need all the help I can get. Of course, we understand, Prabhupada also said, one not devotee, lower than animals. Prabhupada made us. He turned us into Vaishnavas. Lord Chaitanya's work, he was doing Lord Chaitanya's work all over the world. And he saw that in Mexico. It had happened. It was no longer this movement of Westerners, just Americans, Europeans, English-speaking people. It had become very much international society. So he spent 1 week there. He chastised them about the deity worship, the GBC, the whole ride from the airport to the temple. The GBC was telling him how many books they were distributing, how they were translating all of his books into Spanish now, and they were being distributed, thousands, tens of thousands. Prabhupada didn't say one word, and I thought that was strange, because you would think he would be wonderful, very good, keep it up. No, he didn't say anything. But as soon as we got to the temple, it was 1 PM, he sat down, he said to me, get the Rajbhog. Rajbhog offering here. Rajbhog offering, I haven't seen it once. I've been here 2 weeks. That's Raj Bhog. You get it whenever you can. Now, Dharmatma's here, maybe I'll get a little. So Prabhupada knew there was a reason, and I saw him do it 3 different times. He would ask for the Raj Bhoga. First thing he would do, he'd take a chapati, put it in a dal. Mud. Who's making this? Tastes like mud. This chapati cracks it. So he went on the other rail. He didn't say anything about the books. It was the deities. Who's taking care of the deities? He went into the kitchen. The kitchen was dirty. So he knew. Prabhupada knows. And then he instructed. All he did was chastise his GBC because he was neglecting Lord Caitanya, Lord Nityananda. Radha Krishna they had. Huh? And they were negligent. They weren't making nice quality preparations for the lordships. It's the very first business in a temple. It's one of the things I learned from Prabhupada. You take care of the deities first. Everything else will happen. Just take care of them. That's what Prabhupada wanted to see them taken care of. So, from Mexico City now, first time he was South America, Caracas, Venezuela. What has happened in Venezuela, huh? But Prabhupada went to the temple in Venezuela. Caracas was special to me. When I left Prabhupada as his servant, I was away for 8 months. 6 of those months I was in the temple in Caracas, Venezuela. So I knew all the devotees there so well. And I was very eager to go back, happy, because I would see Javi, so many others, but now they could see me in my rightful service, Prabhupada's servant. As soon as we get to the Caracas temple, Prabhupada sits down in the Vyasasana and he sees Lord Caitanya and Lord Nityananda on the altar. You could see, this is what I saw this whole trip, as Maharaj was saying. Prabhupada was always repressing, if we call it repression. He was always holding back that ecstasy. But something happened where he wasn't doing it very well. Spilling out. It was spilling out as he was traveling to these places. And as soon as he saw them, he said that same line. He said, Lord Caitanya, Lord Nityananda, they've traveled very far to be with you. But this was also Prabhupada's humility. He was the one doing all this traveling. He was the one carrying Lord Caitanya with him all around the world 14 times, this way, that way, not the same, this zigzag everywhere, distributing this mercy. Lord Chaitanya's storehouse, love of God. He was giving it to everyone. And he said they've come so far. But as what I saw Prabhupada, he saw the success 10 years later. It wasn't in a pocket here and there. He saw it was done. It's going to take over the world. He had done it. Prabhupada had done it. When he arrived there, he sat on the Vyasasana. It was chilly in Mexico City. I think it's up in the air or something. So he had socks on, had a chadar. So when we get into the temple room, Prabhupada sits on the Vyasasana, and I have duties, just like you. And people, you have to put the chairs. So I have to get his cartels out, get his glasses for books, take his cane. But I was fixed on my godbrothers and godsisters. Like, here I am. You see me, I'm here. Prabhupada's here, I'm right there. So I'm looking at them. And something hit me in the head. And I looked, and Prabhupada took his socks off by himself, rolled them into a ball, and threw them at me to let me know, you've got service here. And the same thing, I was in ecstasy as seeing them. I was in ecstasy thinking, look at me. And he said, yeah, look at you, you fool number one. He was very good at cutting pride, very quickly. Little way, big way, whatever he had to do to protect, like I said the other day. Then we had a darshan in his room. Venezuela, very warm place, a lot of mosquitoes. So Prabhupada's sitting behind his desk, and there are half a dozen of us, and of course one of his disciples is looking, and we're all. But Prabhupada had no mosquitoes around him, apparently. The devotee said, Prabhupada, these mosquitoes, they respect you. You're a pure devotee. And Prabhupada said, yes. He said, here they're respectful, but in Vrindavan, no such respect. In his room there, he called me 1 o'clock in the morning, and he called me in. He was sitting in the middle of the room. This was before we started using mosquito nets around him. So he was sitting in the floor in the middle of his room. I walked in, offered a obeisance. As he just looked, he said, mosquito has dethroned me. So then we came up with we put the mosquito net around Prabhupada's sitting place and his desk so he could do his translating work. And that's why he called me. Not because he was lying in bed and he was being harassed by mosquitoes. No, it was stopping him from doing his service. It was always about service. He didn't call me because it was bothering his sleep. No. He couldn't do his translating. He said, I have to do my translating work. So there are the mosquitoes. So then we left Caracas after a week, and Prabhupada went to Miami. Panchagauda Prabhu was there for that visit at 75 now. It was a very special place. Again, Prabhupada sits down in the temple room. Who's right in front of him? In Caracas, tears were coming. Little, not so much. There wasn't a stop in his activity, but he was getting choked up. But he worked through it. So now he's in Miami. Again, he's looking at Lord Caitanya. It's like he was everywhere. Prabhupada put him everywhere. And there's so many devotees chanting. One of Prabhupada's, I saw his great happiness was sitting in the Vyasasana, seeing us jumping up and down. He would do his head bob, He had a head bob. That was the puppet master. Then when he made that we see it now, boo, boo, when he does it. Well, Prabhupada would go like this, and everybody would jump up and down. And he loved to see us dancing, his dancing Vaishnavas. But he said, Lord Caitanya, he said, Lord Nityananda, very merciful. He said, they have come here. He said, and if you become expert, he said, then we can install Radha Krishna deities. He said, but you have to be very careful. He said, Lord Caitanya is merciful. He said, he doesn't take offense, any offense accidental. He said, but Radha Krishna worship, it's not like that. He said, but even if you don't have Radha Krishna deities in the future, he said, they're already here within Lord Caitanya, Lord Nityananda. He said, so that's okay. So then, Prabhupada went to Atlanta. So Atlanta, he arrived there February 28th, 1975. And we'll see if this works. I was told to do it this way. We'll see. This was his arrival lecture in Atlanta. And for those of you who haven't listened to this lecture, you should listen to it, and hopefully it'll work now. It's 2 minutes. It's a complete lecture from start to finish. It's complete in itself, but it only lasted 2 minutes because he couldn't speak. Prabhupada couldn't speak anymore. So this is when he comes to the Atlanta temple. Very beautiful temple, and let's see.
So, I'm very glad to see you. I'm coming first of all, Mexico City.
Okay.
So, Mexico City, then Caracas, then yeah. I see your temple is the best.
don't know if you heard, he's saying, he said we went to Los Angeles, so now he's seeing all these places he's going to. Prabhupada's a person. He's following what's going on here. So he says, I've been to Los Angeles. He said, then we went to Mexico City. And then he's looking at me, and I think, Caracas. He goes, Caracas. He said, and then I said, Miami. So he said, yes, Miami. He said, and now we're here. He said, and this temple is the best. So then everybody, you hear that. But he said, your temple is the best. Yeah. So now he's going to give the lecture part.
Caitanya Mahaprabhu is very kind. Parama Karuna Pahudiyana. Two lords, Nitai Gaurachan.
Nitai Gaurachan. They're very kind.
That we are just to reclaim the fallen souls of this age. So, they are more kind.
He can't
than
speak.
Krishna.
More kind than Krishna.
Krishna is also very kind.
Krishna is very kind.
To deliver. But Krishna demands
He demands
first of all surrender.
surrender.
Caitanya Mahaprabhu does not demand
He doesn't.
surrender.
So kind.
He's so kind. So, excellent thank you.
So take shelter of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. He's so kind. Prabhupada couldn't speak. He saw it everywhere he's going. He saw what had happened in such a short time. Like Maharaj said, Lord Chaitanya, all over India. I'll tell later on when Prabhupada arrived in Mayapur, he called myself and Paramahamsa in one day. He had been reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he said, we're going to go in jeeps. He said, I want to take you in jeeps. He said, and we're going to travel where Lord Chaitanya went. He had such strong desire to do all these wonderful devotional activities. But he had such pressure. He put on himself to give it all to us. Now we're doing all this, traveling around, have pilgrimage here, pilgrimage there. Prabhupada didn't do it. He didn't have time to do it. He came here. Wherever he went, he just spoke. He gave Lord Chaitanya to everyone. That was his business. But he had such desires. So that was Atlanta. That was just the beginning. He spoke. There were miracles that happened in Atlanta. So many miracles. Prabhupada, imagine, he grabbed the mridanga, sitting on the Vyasasana with the mridanga. When devotees would see, there was different levels of ecstasy when you were Prabhupada. Just seeing him was ecstasy. Seeing him play the kartals, seeing him play the gong, you could get different levels. But then seeing him perform arati to the deities, but playing the mridanga on the Vyasasana, that was really special. We never saw such a thing. Of course, in the mridanga they say was very dead, flat. It was flat. But then he did a little thing, He was one of the first to show how to make it not flat. So he got it tuned. And then he tried chanting, do you know this song? Parama Karuna. Yes, Prabhupada. And then he started, no one could do. No one. He told us, go learn it. Tomorrow we'll do it again. He was determined. He was determined to glorify Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda in that way. He'd just been to too many places. Then the next day was his Guru Maharaj's appearance day. So that was another amazing day. They had put a picture of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur on the Vyasasana. And then they had a little spot for Prabhupada. So Prabhupada came into the temple room and they said, you do arati. So Prabhupada agreed to do the arati. So again, more ecstasy, seeing Prabhupada doing arati to his spiritual master. But this is 1975 in Atlanta, not in Vrindavan or Mayapur. This is in Atlanta. So they had basically one arati tray, and then you have the extra things for that tray for Guru Puja. So they weren't the first class items were on there. Anyway, Prabhupada's doing arati. I'm standing somewhere. The room is packed. Hundreds of devotees inside the temple room looking in through the windows. And Prabhupada's so nice. Then he gets the little conch with the water and he's offering. He goes, and then he's looking for the bowl, or the lota, to put the water in. And there's no lota. So Prabhupada looks, he goes, bowl. And nobody, then he looked at the Balavanta, and they're in the doorway at the temple room, and Prabhupada's bowl. And they go, Hari Bol! And he's going, bowl! And they go, bowl! Hari Bol! And he shakes his head, and he's on one side, and the tulsi plant's there. So Prabhupada from there, he just takes the conch and flicks the water out of the conch, and it just like a fountain, it goes in the Tulsi Devi. So that was Prabhupada. Then he comes up, time to blow the conch shell. Those of you that do artiques, you blowing the conch shell is a very important part. You want to do it right. So this conch shell, no one could do it right. Broken pieces, it was a bad conch shell. And everybody was waiting that knew. But Prabhupada just sat there, put it on his lips, and 3 beautiful came out of the conch shells. So many things happened in those just 3 days. But when he gave his class that morning, of course, it ended with Prabhupada in ecstasy. Ecstasy means, for us seeing Prabhupada, meant he just closed his eyes and nothing is happening. But when that happened, just like all of you here, if he did that, you wouldn't hear a sound. You don't hear anyone breathing because we're all just fixed on this personality who's completely just in the spiritual world. He's absorbed now. He's absorbed in this mood of Lord Caitanya. Who knows? But we knew enough that you don't breathe even. You don't jiggle a japa bead. You don't do anything. You just sit. And then finally, after what seemed like very, very long time, probably 20 seconds or so, 30 seconds, he'll open his eyes, chant Hare Krishna. And that would be it. That was the end of our introduction into ecstasy of Prabhupada. That was the first time. So then in the evening, I always tell them, evening massaging Prabhupada in the evening was the sweetest time of the day. Maharaj is very expert. I always say about Prabhupada, when he wasn't doing his service to his guru, he had his service, just like we have our service to perform. He had his. But then he had the other times of the day, I said, where he did his bhajan. He would read his books, play harmonium. Prabhupada, he was innocent. He was childlike. There was just a way about him. He went, one time as he was headed into the temple room from his quarters, and he literally, he said, now I am the Acharya. And he walked in. It was a role. He had no interest in any of these. He just loved Krishna. Just loved Lord Chaitanya. He just wanted to give him to everyone. He loved them so much. So much love. He just had to give it away all the time. But yes, the Acharya. But no, he was very simple. He was a devotee. He just loved Krishna. So at nighttime, that's the Prabhupada I was with. It wasn't manager Prabhupada, guru Prabhupada. No, it was just this devotee. And I was able to massage at night. No one ever goes in his room at night. No one goes into Prabhupada's room. So you're there alone. And he's lying in bed, and he sees a picture, a painting at the Atlanta temple. It was Krishna, Balaram, cowherd boys, and calves. You know the painting, it looks like there's thousands, cowherd with thousands of calves. So as I'm massaging Prabhupada's legs, he's looking at it. And for the second time, 2 years before, he said the same thing to me. I'm massaging, and he just quietly says, I like the cowherd boys very much. So then my ears, now I know it's time. Prabhupada's talking. Didn't talk a lot, but when he did, that was the talk. Never had anything to do with ISKCON. It would be about his childhood, his parents, his great love for his parents, his father. He said, my father, he said, when I wanted to eat at night, I told you, he demanded puris. His mother kept saying, no, no, no. Then he said, but my father said, give him puris if he wants puris. Then he said to me, perhaps my father knew. What a thing to say. What do you say when he says that to you? Well, I knew. And that's all he would say. Prabhupada would give you little, very tiny little bits of understanding if you could receive it. His father did know. That's what he said. His father knew who he was going to be, what he was going to do. He said it a few times. My father knew. But then he wouldn't say anything else. So now I'm massaging, and then he's looking at that. And he said, every day, Krishna and Balaram, they go into the forest with their friends, the cowherd boys, and herd the calves, because they're young. They're herding the calves. So then they all had their tiffins. So Krishna had very nice kachuri, ladu, puri, halava. And the cowherd boys, theirs was simpler. Not so many ghee things, rice, the chapati, like that. So then after playing, so Prabhupada just speaking this to me while I'm massaging him. Try to understand. This is him telling me what's going on as he's seeing it on his television screen. I don't know what he's seeing, but he's there. He's right there with them. And he says, then they would play. Keep away. Prabhupada said, keep away. You know, they would take his lunch. They stole Krishna's lunch, the other boys, because they knew what he had. And then they would keep it from him. And ultimately, he said they ate Krishna's kachuri and ladu. And Krishna ate chapati, rice. Then he said, I just want to go back to the spiritual world and eat kachuri and ladu with Krishna. Then that's the last thing he said, is just keep massaging. But this was it. This was his ecstasy. I saw it carry on the whole time, the whole trip. So then from Atlanta, made a short stop in Dallas. Then he went to New York, and he went into ecstasy on the Vyasa-san there as well. Again, he's just seeing the accomplishment. It was done. All his hard work. Lord Caitanya, he said, traveled so far. All of Prabhupada, constant traveling, doing so many things at the same time. Then he went to Tehran. The devotees, Treya Rishi was there, Navayovana. Yeah, they were there at that time. Then it was happening. Prabhupada was going to be in Mayapur for Gaur Purnima. This is what the whole trip was about. From the time he left Juhu, Prabhupada's focus was going to this place, Mayapur Dham, where Lord Chaitanya's his birthplace. Not just going there, 500 of his disciples are also headed there. They had the festival the year before, but the Lotus building was finished. There were rooms for so many devotees. This is the major festival, big major festival. And Prabhupada came into Mayapur, and he went up to the Lotus building, his rooms. So there was Bhavananda, Jaipataka Maharaj. I was there, a few other devotees. So right away, Jaipataka Maharaj, he offered obeisances, offered prayers to Prabhupada. Said, Prabhupada, everything you have done, it was beautiful. The marble floors, they were like mirrors, they were so shiny. Prabhupada really liked that. He encouraged Bhavananda. That was Bhavananda's clean. Here, when they opened this temple, Bhavananda was in charge of cleanliness when they had the grand opening. So Prabhupada liked cleanliness. Sometimes in Mayapur, he'd be going out in the morning walks, 6 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, and there'd be things, dirt, little plates, leaf plates, whatever, things. And he'd say, why is it so dirty? You know what the answer was? It's japa time. Prabhupada, there's no such thing. Cleanliness, japa is there too, but everything had to be done. Prabhupada, sometimes he would use that most important, when you would see Prabhupada, he would write in letters something was most important. Don't misinterpret. It didn't mean nothing else mattered. Everything we did, he would say, is most important. There was never a less important. Book distribution, most important. It's deity worship, punctuality, most important. So everything is most important in your devotional life. There's no less important. We have to do everything. So now he's in Mayapur, in his rooms, beautiful rooms. The only building, for a mile, there's nothing, just this beautiful breeze. It's March. And I saw Prabhupada in Mayapur a few times. Prabhupada really liked Mayapur. There was something when he would go sit in his rooms, you'll see pictures of him in Mayapur, with the hands behind him, his feet on top of his desk. He just seemed very happy in Mayapur. And I'm sure it was for any number of reasons. The fact that now he had Karmastan, We talked. All the times I went to Mayapur with Prabhupada, he never got out of the car until he arrived at his ISKCON property. He offered respects from the car, Lord Chaitanya's birthplace. But from his veranda, looking over there, he said, Karmastan, more important than Janmastan. So it's the activities. He said, this place, this ISKCON temple here, most important. We're carrying out Lord Chaitanya's desire. Jaipataka and Bhavananda. Prabhupada, this beautiful building. The breezes were flowing through one window, out the other. It was just windows on either side. And just breezes blowing through. And Prabhupada said, yes. And they said, Prabhupada, is your design? Prabhupada said, I gave a framework. He said, but Krishna, he provides the intelligence. So now you're going to see, Prabhupada just keeps deflecting, Every time you compliment him, he deflects. So then, Prabhupada, you have brought this temple. He says, now he said, Srila Prabhupada, it is his mercy that we are here. So now he's talking about his spiritual master. This is by his mercy we're here. Yes, but Prabhupada, you have done, he said it is Bhakti-Vinod Thakur. He said he predicted that people from all over the world would come to Mayapur, chant Hare Krishna. Do you know how many countries there are now in Mayapur? Who knows? 84 countries. People from 84 countries are living in Mayapur, visiting Mayapur. This is the prediction of Bhakti-Vinod Thakur. It's incredible. You take a 10-minute walk. You don't understand anyone. You hear Russian, Spanish. I don't understand because I don't speak any languages. But this is Mayapur now. And then he said it's by Bhakti-Vinod Thakur's. He predicted that someone would come, someone would appear who would bring all these people. He said, I may be that person. And that's the last thing he said. Then he said, he looked at Jayapataka, he said, so you're planting bananas? Right after he said he's the person that Lord Caitanya has given us to save the whole world. Then he asked Jayapataka if he's planting bananas in the very next same breath. This was Prabhupada. No time praise. He's not interested in any praise. He didn't do anything. That's how he saw. He's not doing anything. He's just taking the mercy from his spiritual master, from Lord Caitanya. And then he said to him, and you should get cow from the West. He said, get a Jersey cow, and you mate it with one of the Sarabi varieties. He said, then you'll get more milk, and they can tolerate the heat. So this was Prabhupada's international vision. Now we see these. You have to take milk from this cow, not that cow. And we even have Maya cows now. Western cows, they're in Maya because they don't have type A milk. They don't have a hump on their back. This was not Prabhupada's program. He came to the West to deliver all us people with no humps on our back, or some of us with humps on our back. He came to deliver everyone, and the cows, and the dogs. He said, dog, also person. Everything. Prabhupada saw everyone to be delivered. All the animals. That's what he was doing. But he didn't take any of that praise. But then he goes into the temple room. 500 devotees surrounding. The Vyasa-san was back at the temple room then. And he starts talking about those two lords again. And he just can't help himself. He would get quiet. That was an ecstasy. Tears would come. He'd just take a deep breath and he'd just stay there. But what happened is, right behind him, and there was one devotee, sannyasi, he figured there's too much silence. So he starts chanting, Nama Om Vishnu Padai. And Prabhupada opens his eyes. And kirtan started. So the kirtan went on for some time. And then afterwards, there was a lot of discussion. You can imagine devotees, my godbrothers, all saying, why did you do that? You shouldn't do that. Prabhupada was an ecstasy. We had a formula. Now, some of us, we had a formula. You sit and you wait. We had experience. We already knew Prabhupada in ecstasy. Obviously, you don't because you did the wrong thing. This is how you get real fast. As soon as you know something. So, Brahmananda is Prabhupada's secretary at that time. Brahmananda's secretary, I was servant. We were a very interesting team. We got along very nicely. So I remember walking up the stairs. Prabhupada's ahead, but Brahmananda's entangled in a conversation, an argument about what to do, the do-nots. We had our own do's and do-nots. Do not touch Prabhupada's feet. Do not do the do-not. A lot of do-nots. Don't write them letters. So now it was this. Kirtan. Chant Hare. Prabhupada always says, chant Hare Krishna. So that's the proper answer. No, we should just leave him. So anyway, that didn't go anywhere. So what do? You go to Prabhupada. Prabhupada was with us. Anything, if we didn't have an answer, was so easy. Just ask Prabhupada. You just find the person who is close enough to could ask. Even now, people see me around. I have people coming up to me to ask him questions because they think, I'm connected to him. Don't bother. I've got no influence with Panchagoda. But it's the same thing. So they're saying, Brahmananda goes in. Brahmananda and I are sitting in front of Prabhupada. I don't say anything because this is not a smart argument in my understanding. I already knew the answers, all these things. I thought, Prabhupada, this morning you were in the temple room. So there's a discussion. What do we do if you're in a Vyasa-san and you go into ecstasy? Prabhupada looks at me, what are you talking about? He said, this is not an important thing. wasn't to him. It's not. Again, we don't talk about these things. Yes, but Prabhupada, we're trying to understand, because some devotees say like this, and some devotees say we should chant, some devotees say you should be quiet. And Prabhupada's like, he said, I don't do it that often. So now Prabhupada's actually like saying, excuse me, but I do, I don't do it. Like, just forget it. But Prabhupada, what should we do? Should we? He said, chant Hare Krishna. But it was a very much like, just chant Hare Krishna now even, not just then, but just chant Hare Krishna. All your questions will be answered. He was just embarrassed. He said, why are you talking this? But this was our Prabhupada. We live for these moments, to see Prabhupada. And there in Mayapur, but I kept seeing it over and over again. Every time he looked at Lord Caitanya, he just couldn't help himself. What a wonderful state. The potential is there. We just have to do very simple things. Like I said, Prabhupada's life wasn't Guru Acharya. It was seeing the devotee that was there, reading his books, chanting his rounds. Somebody asked me the other day, Prabhupada, people ask me how many rounds Prabhupada chanted in very interesting ways, because it's not a question I would ever ask. But somebody asked me, how many counter beads does Prabhupada have on his bead bag? That was a very nice way of asking a question. And he had 16 with the 4 other little thingies there. And he would chant on his beads. I would see him chanting on his beads. I see him pulling down counter beads. That's what he did every day. Sometimes at night when I was massaging him, he would sit up because he was chanting rounds. Other times he would lie down and he wasn't chanting rounds. I never asked, how many rounds? Have you finished your rounds today, Prabhupada? No, wasn't on my menu, that. But people ask those questions like I was supposed to. Like, how many rounds? I don't know how many rounds he chanted. Does it matter? So anyway, one day I walked in. New Dwarka for me was, Prabhupada just gave me so many instructions in New Dwarka. So many little. He would just give me 10, 20-second, like profound statements. And then he'd just put his head back down. Anyway, that day I came in and he was sitting behind his desk. His feet were out there. His feet were straight out, peeking under the desk. I offered obeisances. He called me in. I offered obeisances. And I sat up because you never knew. You might ask for something to eat. You don't know. Usually it was a person. But he just looked at me. And he had his bead bag. Whoops. My counter beads are inside there. I have counter beads. So he just looked at me and he went, there. He said, I have finished my 16 rounds. I can do any damn thing I want. That was to me. And he didn't say that on the video. He said it to me. He knew me very well, Prabhupada. So he was letting me know. That's our business. And I've heard him say it. I've heard him say it to GBC sannyasis. Just chant your 16 rounds and then do whatever you want. Say, chant your rounds, follow the principles, and do whatever you want when somebody wasn't ready to surrender. Or we say, Prabhupada, disciple Prabhupada, we're like puppets. We're like your puppets. Prabhupada said, yes, I want you to go like this, and you're going like this. So he said, we're doing everything wrong. But he kept that, and he kept giving us his books, the most wonderful things, Prabhupada's books. But I saw his ecstasy, seeing what Lord Caitanya has come to give us all. We travel, so many of us, many of you here, we travel thousands of miles to come to Mayapur Dham, to come to Vrindavan. Prabhupada gave us these places. Huh? We know he said everything. What did he say about this temple? Do you know, Panchagoda? He said everything is right here in this temple.
Ramananda would say that often.
Yes. We don't go. I say, I have not gone anywhere. I've been here now 2 weeks. I went to Govardhan one day because I was invited to talk about Prabhupada. Otherwise, what else is there to do? Like he said, you sit in front of Krishna Balaram at Kirtan. What a life we've been given. Prabhupada said it was simply wonderful. We chant, we dance. Because they said, Prabhupada, he said we eat these. And they said, Prabhupada, you're simply wonderful. Simply wonderful. He did. He said every day. Prabhupada, is today festival day? Say every day is a festival. We don't have any other days. And when you travel with pure devotee, you see every day is a festival. With Prabhupada, everywhere he went, everyone was in ecstasy because of him. Because he shared himself with us. He shared Lord Caitanya, Lord Nityananda. With his tears, he's given us. Always saw, from the first time I saw Prabhupada, I never saw a dry eye. You'll never see, Prabhupada's eyes were never dry. They always had this diamond glistening look in them. They always were wet. Always. And we would look, we saw love, lots of compassion and love, not judgment. Never saw judgment when he looked at us. He looked at us with love. Just as Lord Caitanya, Lord Nityananda, they're looking with love. Just want to give it. Prabhupada made it his mission. And when he saw it happened, he was very pleased. And he left this world very happy that he had transformed the entire planet. All right. We can stop here. Should we? Oh, well, 5 of.
One last story.
One last story. Okay. Anything? I could talk about the puff rice that did happen in Caracas.
Okay, talk about it.
Okay. So that was the trip from Mexico City to Caracas, Venezuela. And prasadam, very most important. Prasadam, when Prabhupada traveled, never went alone. Always prasadam was there. Always had your bag of prasadam. 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 25 hours, we have prasadam. So this again, Mexico City, one Mataji, she made muri, puffed rice, peanuts. Anyway, wrapped it up in the tin foil, put it in the bag. So now we're on the plane, and as soon as the lights go out, fasten your seatbelt light goes out, then Prabhupada's table goes down because it's time to eat. Sometimes he didn't even follow that rule. If he wanted to, he would eat even while the plane was taking off. I had that experience. That was an experience in Australia. And it was a big mix-up. Prabhupada arrived at the airport after a long flight, and Madhvisa was bringing him breakfast to the transit lounge in Sydney. So everything the plane came in early. Madhvisa he grabbed the deity's plates. He just grabbed the deity's plates, their breakfast plates, everything. Took it to the airport. So we're sitting in transit, and Prabhupada's waiting for prasadam. And it's not, Madhvisa's nowhere to be seen. And Prabhupada's sitting next to me. And he's, timing also was important for Prabhupada, and I understood that. One reason maybe I was around a long time, because 8 o'clock meant before 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock is the latest. If he says he wants breakfast 8 o'clock, you should be ready by 7:45 and then see what's going on. You're never, ever late. Madhvisa's late, and Prabhupada and I are sitting next to me, and he's, what's going on? I don't know. I don't know, Prabhupada. Finally, Madhvisa comes in. He's sannyas. He's got these silver plates, the deity's silver plates. And I'm sorry, Prabhupada, they wouldn't let me through. No problem. That's okay. As soon as he said, Prabhupada, that's okay. Now they're saying it's time to board the flight. We got the plates, Madhvisa's there, I'm there, and Prabhupada says, all right, he said, I'll eat on the plane. We'll take the plates on the plane. So now I get the plates. Prabhupada was one of the few flights he was on first class on a 747, huge monster airplane. And we're in the very first two seats. We're right there. There's a lounge upstairs, a bar, all kinds. But we hit wintertime, coats, and first class. So now there's like this woman running around, grabbing my coat, grabbing Prabhupada's coat, hanging things. And we sit down, and there's nothing in front of us. The trays came out from the side. So as soon as we sit down, Prabhupada's prasadam. And it was it. People are boarding the plane. Everything's going on. Prabhupada was hungry. So plate's there. It's got fruits. It's got halava. It's got hot milk there. It's got a glass of orange juice. And I'm, of course, I was not a very good servant. I'm feeling a little, a little embarrassed, And Prabhupada was transcendental. Prabhupada never saw anyone around him. He just had his business, whatever it was, and now it's Krishna Prasadam. And he was very, very serious when he took Prasadam. It was a sacrament. It was Krishna. There's no nonsense, no chit-chat with other people. No, he honored. But now he's honoring, and he's hungry, and he's grabbing it. And the plane starts taxiing. The plane is now going along the runway. And I'm just kind of sitting there, and no one's saying anything, even though what he's doing was obviously, you shouldn't do it. They had to put everything away. But no one's saying anything because now we're in first class. And then it starts taking off, and I'm holding the glasses. Prabhupada doesn't even look at me. He's just taking prasadam, and I'm holding the orange juice glass, I'm holding the other. And then it's in the sky, and then so he ate. And what he usually did, he ate half of it. He ate about half. And then he looks at me and said, okay. So that meant something. That meant all of that was now mine. That's what it meant. Of course, I couldn't eat from the deity plates, but it was mine. He gave it to me. He ate what he ate and left something for me. Now, as soon as I move the plate over, stewardess comes over. She says, I'll take care of that for you. So foolish me thought, sure, that's a great idea. She's going to wash the plates, do some devotional service for Prabhupada, and I can just sit here and not do anything and feel special. The flight went on for a few hours. Prabhupada didn't say one word to me the whole time. And I was so dense. I still didn't even know what had happened. I was going to find out. So then the plane lands. Prabhupada was very interesting with me. He didn't yell at me. After a while, he learned a trick with me. He learned it from my mother. He would just get silent with me, which was worse than yelling. I had a wife that died previously. She would say, your silence is worse than any screaming. But Prabhupada could do that too. He would just look at me, He knew that was enough. So now the plane lands, and doors open, first class. We're the first ones. So woman gives me Prabhupada's coat. I'm still not even remembering the plates. We get to the doorway, and this woman hands me the bag with the silver plates. And I'm like, thank you. And Prabhupada looks at me. He said, where's the prasadam? That was the worst thing. Of course, she threw it out. This was for me. And I just missed it. And he just looked at me like, you. Well, that's all it took. For days I could barely get up, but that was his mercy. But see, that's what it was like. You just never knew what Prabhupada was going to do. It was one of the most interesting times I had. Prabhupada just, again, he was literally in the spiritual world. It had nothing to do with anything going on. And I said he never talked to he didn't talk to them. he would always, if they said something, he would say, what? And then I would talk, and then he would tell me, and I would tell them. So he was, like I said the other day, he was very strict sannyasi as well. He knew to be sannyasi. He didn't chit-chat, especially ladies. He used a servant for that, to communicate on the outside. So yes, that was a lesson. Again, Prabhupada always knew. It was right here at Radha Damodar Temple. My very first, after being with Prabhupada for literally 1 month in Vrindavan at Kartik, right at Srila Rupa Goswami Samadhi, Bhajan Kutir, and Prabhupada speaking from Nectar of Devotion. Should I do that? Should we keep going? Do we have time for? Yeah, okay. Puffed rice at least, yes. But Radha Damodar, so anyway, I was in charge of recording his Nectar Devotion classes. And so I sat right in front. And at that time, the time of it's when the monkeys, all the animals, when the sun starts to set, everybody's claiming their property for the night. They got to find their spot in the trees and their spot wherever it is. So there's lots of noises. You hear the parrots chirping. Prabhupada would say they're saying where they found food. He said when they come back in the day, you hear all this chirping. He said they tell one another where they got food. And then in the morning, they tell each other where they're going to go to find food. Prabhupada, we know he talked. Prabhupada could talk. He knew monkey talk. Apparently he knew bird talk. He knew things. So there were flies about. Everything was beautiful. Monkeys were back in the trees. We saw parrots 2 by 2. And it's my very first experience at Radha Damodar Temple. But Prabhupada's speaking, and I grabbed a chamara fan, and I'm fanning him. Now again, this was my entrance into Vrindavan Dham, Radha Damodar Temple, Prabhupada's servant. It was like, could be more wonderful. And I'm fanning him as he's talking. But I'm fanning like it's an arati. I'm not doing anything of use. It's to get the flies away. But I'm so ignorant, and I'm fanning, and Prabhupada, I see him, and he's like this. There's a fly on his nose, but I'm still. And he's speaking. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, right there in front of Rupa Goswami. Sometimes he would say Rupa Goswami was there watching. He would tell us. But so then in that wonderful sound systems they've had in India since 1972, all the way turned up to 100% level, Prabhupada's speaking and he says, get someone up here with some intelligence, because I'm doing this. And it's useless. And then he just went right back into the lecture. So it was like Statue of Liberty. One devotee, brahmachari, British brahmachari. I always say he was eccentric. We know him as eccentric, tall. He grabbed that fan from me, and I went back down right there next to the tape recorder and started playing with the dials, so I looked like I was, again, had a purpose in life. And he grabbed that fan, and he didn't do an arti. He just used it like a sword, and he's like this. And Prabhupada's speaking. Of course, there's no flies, nothing, and Prabhupada's speaking, and he goes, and then I'm like, oh, geez, he just cut my pride so fast in front of everyone. 50 people, every devotee in Vrindavan, every one that wasn't an Indian was right there in front, and Prabhupada just smashed me down. It was the nicest thing, and I'll never forget it. Never forget. It was the best chastisement I ever got. But I remember that evening walking back, and Brahmachari came up to me and said, Prabhu, you're so fortunate. And I went, yeah. you want some of my good fortune? Come on in for a few minutes. No, it was wonderful fortune, but of course, we never wanted to disappoint Prabhupada. So on the plane, we put it down. We're flying to Caracas, Venezuela. We're in the midst of Prabhupada's ecstasy. And now he's going to be ecstatically eating puffed rice. That's when he said, my father knew. He was telling me a story about puffed rice at the time. His mother would make it from scratch, he said. Heat up a big, thick wok, and you put the rice in, because it's like popcorn, just puffs. So Prabhupada had perfect memory of everything. And everything was nice, wonderful childhood, loving mother, loving father, loving son. He talks, it's what we should do. It's what life is like. So puffed rice was his favorite. So now I just open the aluminum foil and he's eating. Quietly, doesn't speak. Didn't say any, no, just quietly just took prashadam. And then he ate half of it, and then he just looks at me. So then I moved it over there. I split the aluminum foil in half. Paramahamsa, he's at the aisle. He gets half, and I get half. This was our life with Prabhupada, just eating his remnants, just living to eat his remnants. Now we're eating, not like he ate. We're just honoring, at least I was just enjoying. We're hungry. And the stewardess, those stewardesses, always young stewardess walking down the aisle, and she stops right in front of us because we're eating. Everyone else is just sitting there on this flight. And she looked, and she reached beyond Paramahamsa to my seat, puts her hand in the plate of puffed rice, and takes it and throws it in her mouth. And she looks at me, she says, "This is very good, what is it?" And I'm, of course, in shock that she's just put her hand in my plate. Paramahamsa, Swami, he's eating. He doesn't care about it. He's happy. And Prabhupad's Prabhupada. He's not paying attention. And I said, "It's puffed rice." "Well, why are you eating?" I said, "Well, we're vegetarian." I said, "So we have special meals and all." She was very nice. And she says, "Would you like me to go?" She said, "I can go to first class. Was there anything you would like?" So, of course, I look at Prabhupada because he's not going to answer her. You see how things are? So I look at Prabhupada, he says, "Hot milk." There's always hot milk. Anywhere, hot milk is always good. Whatever you're doing any time of day, hot milk. That was Prabhupada's formula. So I said, "We'll all have hot milk." Because that was my translation. What's good for Prabhupada was meant for us too. Then I got one hot milk. No, now we get 3 hot milks. And then anything else. It's like being so friendly, you know. And she said, "I can get fruits, cheese, bread." Prabhupada, yes. Prabhupada says, "Yes, bring it on, you know, everything, anything." So she goes back up to first class, to the little, whatever they call it, the kitchen area there. And I turned to Prabhupada, I said, "Prabhupada," I said, "that was amazing. I'm meditating on her taking his Maha Prasadam. Imagine, out of nowhere, who gets that? No one gets it. His disciples, you know, we were anything to get it. I had somebody offer me a devotee once here, right there at that room. Came to the door, said, "I'll give you $100 for Prabhupada's remnants." I should have taken it. Looking back, why didn't I take that $100? I said, "No," because he offered. I immediately said, "No." I said, this is what I do. This was my ecstasy, giving out Prabhupada's Maha. You know, just giving away mercy is the most ecstatic feeling. So I said that to Prabhupada, and he said, "Women have a natural tendency to serve." So he responded to her getting us milk and fruits and things. He didn't deal with that. Her taking his Maha, So she came back, brought everything. It was very nice. So this is Prabhupada. So 20 years later, that was 1975, I was giving a talk, and I told that story. It was in Los Angeles, New Dwarka. And after the class, devotee man comes up to me and says, "Can I tell you a story?" I said, "Okay." And he said, "I've been doing Sankirtan for years, and in South America, Mexico, here, there. He said, and of course, we do lots of villages. You go to the villages. He said, we have drive jeeps. I said, how Prabhupada wanted to be in the jeeps, follow Lord Chaitanya. He said, we go in jeeps. We go to the town square. You know, usually there's a fountain. European towns, and you have the fountains, water, fresh water. He said, we do Harinam. And then we go off in the vehicles and go door to door, distribute Prabhupada's books. So he said, in the rainforest of Brazil, is what he said. And he was doing that, going door to door. This is, back in the 70s, late 70s. And he came to one door, so he knocks on the door, and a woman answered the door and invites him in. A person, dhoti, tilak, shaved head, she invites him in, says, Hare Krishna. He said, come on in. So, of course, he was shocked. And he said, you're a devotee. And she said, yes. She said, I met the devotees on the plane. She said, I was a stewardess. She was the very same person who had taken Prabhupada's prasadam. And he found her in the middle of the rainforest just to give him inspiration, and to give her inspiration, and to give all of us inspiration. This process works. From the tiniest little detail. How did she take Prabhupada's Mahaprasadam? Who knows? Only you can say as a super soul guided her for some reason. She had such sukriti, that she was able to do that. And she became a devotee. Not only she became a devotee, she was here. And she was telling the story herself of how she ran into the devotees by being a stewardess. It's also very important. It's one of the things Prabhupada, I see when I have a garland, I always think, I should wear a garland. But Prabhupada liked us to do these things. He'd like people to see, this is a Vaishnava. We worship Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, we worship Radha Krishna, we're Vaishnavas. And we look very nice, we're clean. You say clean shaven, I shaved this morning. So I could say that after a week of not shaving. Prabhupada would let his go for, in Vrindavan, he would culture a few days, But yes, we're clean shaven and we dress clean and nice and we decorate ourselves for their lordships. Yes, he said not to you, Hansaduda's wife, Prabhupada said to her, Krishna doesn't like ugly gopis. We don't come before the Lord dressed in our holy attire. Well, today you have to maybe. But in general, no, we want to look very pleasing. Look how he's dressing for us. This is our business. So Prabhupada stressed that. We would get off the airplane. He would hang garlands on all of us. I felt like, Prabhupada, why are you putting a garland on me? But no, this is what we do. For Prabhupada's pleasure. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Lord Nityananda Mahamahotsava ki jai. Lord Nityananda Appearance Day ki jai. Hare. Chaitanya Nityananda. Chaitanya Nitai. Gaura Hari. The ladies called him Gaura Hari because of his golden complexion. Prabhupada says he was called Navadvip Chandra. Of course, Nader Nimai. He said born under the Nimai tree. He said in Navadvip Chandra. He said, but I'm giving you the name Mayapur Chandra. He named my son. He said, you've never heard this name before. He said, I made it up. Who else could make up a name? Mayapur Chandra. So yes, this was Prabhupada's invention. So that's Lord Chaitanya. Hare Krishna.